To make the little mini terracotta pots covered with fabric, we started by priming our terracotta pot with white spray paint, and then we picked a color to paint the pot. This is the fabric we're going to use, so we picked this pretty surf color to go with the blue background of our fabric. And then we want to paint the inside of the pot and the lip of the pot. The fabric is going to go from here to here, so we don't need to paint this part. But the lip here is going to show, and inside the pot is going to show. So we want to make sure that it's a color we like, and that's why we chose this pretty little blue color. We're using a multi-surface acrylic craft paint, and we're going to coat it with outdoor Mod Podge when we put the fabric on it. So don't worry about the paint being indoor, outdoor, or whatever for your pot. It will be protected by the outdoor Mod Podge, which we love. And we're just going to paint this around. You could spray paint this, but we didn't want the color underneath the fabric. We like the white under the fabric. If you wanted to spray paint it, you could mask this off with some masking tape here and then spray paint it. But we also like the brushy look of hand painted pieces, especially on these little terracotta pots. They're so cute. I'm just brushing it around like that. And then we want to do this lip. And because I don't want to get it up in here, I'm just going to use my flat side of my paintbrush here and just make a little straight line like that. It's pretty easy if you use a flat brush like this. And then once you have the lip painted, you can just let it dry, or you can use a blow dryer if you want to speed up the process. Don't worry about getting this edge too straight, because that's where the fabric is going to be. The fabric's going to create our straight edge there. So it looks like I'm just about done here. And I'm going to let this dry, and then we will get started putting the fabric on. So our little terracotta pot is dry, and you can see I went ahead and painted the whole inside, but you could leave the inside unpainted because once you have a plant in there, no one will see it. You just want to make sure you paint the lip. So that's all nice and dry, and we want to cut the fabric to go around the pot, but you can't just cut a strip of fabric and wrap it around because it's cone shaped. It turns out a strip of fabric doesn't fit it properly. You need to make a little template. So to make the template, we have some tissue paper, and this is just tissue from the dollar store like you'd put in a gift bag. And I'm going to wrap it around the pot like that. And then I'm going to use a pencil. I'm just going to reach up in here. I can feel that's the edge. That's where I want the top edge of the fabric to be. I'm just going to draw a little pencil line on there around to this side. And I think I'll draw a straight line down. This will be our right side of the template. And rotate around. And just pushing up into that little crevice. That's the little lip between the top of the pot and the bottom. And this technique works for any size terracotta pot. We chose these teeny ones because they're adorable. But you could do the same thing if you wanted to cover a much bigger pot. I'm going to just flip this over and see where we're meeting up with the other side of our template. So here's this side. We need it to go around to here. I'm just going to continue on, and then I can see that that's my line underneath that I drew. I'm going to overlap the fabric a little bit, so I'm going to make my template about a ½ inch wider there. So that's the top edge of my template, but I also need to know what this bottom edge is. So to get the bottom edge, this one's a little bit easier because you can just fold the paper over the edge and you can just rub it with the side of the pencil there to get that line. That's the top line and that's the bottom line. Just rotate that around. Just rub that a little bit. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Better that it's a little bit too big than too small, because we can always trim the fabric back a little bit. So that's the bottom. Remember, that's the left side. I just want to make sure as I unpeel the template that I have it drawn all the way around. This is the right side. I don't have it drawn here. You can see that. I missed a couple marks here. There it is. That's how you do the template. I'm just going to unroll my pot and flip it over. And as you can see, this shape is not a straight line. It's curved, and that's how it matches up with the pot and the curve of the pot. So now that we have that drawn, I can use my scissors to cut this out. This is a lot like dressmaking. This feels just the same as a pattern for a dress, but we're making a pattern for our pot. And you can use this over and over if you treat it nicely and do more than one pot. Here's our template. And then I like to check it with the pot. It may be a little wide or a little narrow, and then I'll know when I'm cutting out the fabric to give myself a little extra space. So here's the template, fitting it on here. It's pretty good. I can see it's a little short right here, if you can see that. So I'm going to give myself a little extra width on the bottom. You know, it's just hard to get these things perfect, but it's a pretty good start for our little template, going around like that. And that's the little overlap that we allowed. So now I can pick out a part of the fabric I want to use. I think I want some of the pink to show, but I also want some of the green here. So I think this is a good spot. And I have a couple straight pins, just like dressmaking. I'm going to pin my template here flat onto the fabric. This is beautiful fabric by Amy Butler. And it's a kind of a thin cotton, almost like you would use for quilting. So there's our template pinned onto the fabric. And now I'm going to cut out the fabric. And remember, I'm going to leave a little extra at the bottom because I feel like my template was a tiny bit short. So I'm going to cut the fabric here. These scissors are made by Fiskars, and they're ergonomic so that you press the spring closed rather than pulling the handles apart. They're very nice if you do a lot of cutting. They're very nice even if you don't do a lot of cutting. They feel great. They're more like rose clippers or something, like garden tools outdoors are like that a lot. I'm going to cut this away so you can see what I'm doing here. And then here on the bottom, I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra leeway because we can trim that off when we fit it onto the pot. There's our fabric cut out from our template. And then we can check it and see how it fits. And looks great. See how nice that is? We just fit it right up around the edge there. And then this bottom part, I'm just going to trim a tiny bit off the bottom. I can see how much to do, just a tiny little bit. You could also wait until you put it on the pot and trim it off. I think that looks pretty good. I'll just test that again. There, that looks perfect. So now we're ready to use our outdoor Mod Podge to Mod Podge the fabric onto the pot. So we have our fabric cut and ready to go onto our little pot, and I just got some outdoor Mod Podge here. And the way I like to use it is I like to put a coat of the Mod Podge all the way around on the pot. The fabric's going to go from this edge to this edge, so that's the only place where we need the Mod Podge right now. And I do a pretty generous amount. We're going to press it down once we put the fabric on, and so if there's too much under there, it'll just squeeze out. It dries clear, so don't worry about getting any up on the blue part. We're going to coat the blue part too, just to give the protective finish of the outdoor Mod Podge. So I've got the Mod Podge all the way around, and then I just want to lay the fabric onto my pot. And I'm lining it up with the top and the bottom here. There's the top and here's the bottom. And as I just rotate the pot here, I can put the fabric all the way around, and you can see this is where our back edge was, and I can mush the fabric a little bit. It has some flexibility so that it matches up there, and I'm just pressing it down with my fingers. Make sure there's no bubbles. And then once I have the fabric on the way I want it like that, do one more coat with the outdoor Mod Podge. Just paint the outdoor Mod Podge right over the top of the fabric and over the edge here at the bottom. And this is where that little overlap was. It didn't have any Mod Podge underneath it, so I'm going to give it a little extra here and then fold that back down. So that's glued down with the Mod Podge. Once you coat the whole thing, you'll want to go back and also paint the inside of the pot so it has the same protective finish. And then you can just let this dry. It says on the package how long it should dry before you put it to the test. We usually wait a couple days, especially before like planting in a pot like this. We don't want the Mod Podge to be limited in how much it can dry by having a bunch of wet soil in there before it's done its job. So I'm just going to go one more time all the way around, and I'm just going to go back and make sure that the lip and inside are covered, and then I'm going to let that dry, and that is how we cover our little terracotta pot with fabric.